Hi, everyone. A warm welcome to all our audience from all over the world that you have joined us today for this webinar on planning of sustainable underground spaces. I'm Antonia Cornaro, the co-chair of the ITA Committee of Underground Space, and I work for Amberg Engineering in Switzerland. Today, I'm not live on Hagerbach on location for the first time, which is a weird feeling, but that has its reasons why we're not on site today with you. And I also want to say hello and a good welcome to my co-chair and co-moderator, Han Admiral.
Thank you, Antonia. And yes, very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, wherever you are in the world watching our webinar. I'm coming live to you from a sunny the Netherlands, which is quite remarkable, actually. The sun has just come out, so that promises a lot of good things for this webinar. So as you said, Antonia, you mentioned we're going to devote the webinar to the planning of underground space, which is, of course, a very important topic. And we also have some of our activity group leaders with us today who will be available for questions later on. Maybe you like to introduce them as well.
Absolutely. So first of all, this is our 5th webinar already in this series of innovation, inspiration, and demonstration of underground spaces. And this one is really focusing on ITACUS, what ITACUS is doing about an urban underground future. And precisely, we will present today our activity groups on urban integration and on urban sustainability, as well as our Young Professional Think Deep program. The first block will concentrate on a planning conversation of the underground space between 3 professionals, one of them being Marie-Lou Mello, our activity group leader on urban integration, and then followed by a block with Chrysothemis Paraskivopoulou on urban sustainability. And we're closing with the Young Professional Think Deep program. We have tons of audience interaction in between ready for you, so have the menti.com ready, because we will immediately now start with a little survey with you, right, Han?
Absolutely. We're just going to switch the, let me just see if I can make that work. And yes, just, so there we go.
You should menti.com, yeah?
Yeah, you go to menti.com. You can also scan this QR code on your mobile app, on your mobile or your tablet, I was going to say, and then that should lead you directly to the actual Mentimeter. I'll just leave that on the screen a little bit longer so that everybody can actually log on to Mentimeter, and then we will.
And you can start sending hearts.
Yeah, there we go. So we go to the first slide. This is just to see whether everybody is awake out there, but also where are you from what part of the world are you actually watching this this webinar right now? let us know. There we go. And I'm very much hoping that there'll be a lot more from the other parts of the world than from Europe.
This looks very like a very diverse audience so far, Han.
Absolutely. There's
All
somebody
5
who's coming from the
continents.
middle of the Indian Ocean, I think, or the Pacific. What is it? No.
There's some islands there probably, Han, that
Who knows? Who knows? But indeed,
somebody...
we seem to have quite a nice spread across the globe at the moment. Just wait to see if there's a bit more coming.
Australia, Latin America, North America. Don't see anyone from Canada yet. And then some representation from Africa, Southeast Asia. Did I say Australia? And of course, a lot of people also from Europe. We have especially timed this in a time zone that that it's possible for everyone to join.
Absolutely. So there we go. So we quite an interesting insight. There's still locations popping up on the globe.
Probably people are also still getting the Menti ready. Usually with the first question, people aren't set up yet, but please leave it on because we will have surveys throughout this webinar.
Yeah, and I just see somebody from Canada popping up in the questions. Abbas Kamili Banpe, he says, I'm from Canada. Well, show it on the map, sir, where you are in, or madam, where you are on the map, and then we'll know that Canada. Yeah.
Looking good.
Okay.
Very nice worldwide representation.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question, where we're going to build a nice word cloud. And the question is, what interests you most in the planning of underground spaces? It's a very open question, but I'm just interested to hear your take on what you think about planning of underground spaces. What is it? Why is it interesting? Why should we be doing it? Just pop up your questions.
Do we need them? Money, diversity and complexity, public space, life cycle management, a white canvas, basically, yeah. Living worth environment, question mark. That's something we're discussing. Sustainability. The risks associated are so challenging. New opportunities for living arrangements. Future of transport networks. Energy storage, cost benefit, space management. Several people are responding on points of sustainable development, resilient living space. Reduce environmental impact compared to other forms of transport, improved sustainability. Space, underground transportations, possibilities for land use overground. Better ways of collaborating with all stakeholders involved. Landscape protection. Yeah,
you know what I find
ones.
interesting, Antonio, what I find interesting from these replies we're getting?
Yeah, what, Han?
Well, it's interesting to see that if you look at them, that there is quite a diversity in answers, and it kind of highlights what we'll be going into during this webinar, is that it very much depends on what discipline you represent and what your perspective is of underground space. So you know, the engineers looking at it in a certain way, planners, urban planners looking at it in a different way. That kind of reflects in these points that are being made.
I'm sure we have a diverse audience, and we will find out later from you what your background is, and that will give us cues on why you picked which topic that you find important. New design method is another one, exactly. Human interaction, that's a good one as well. We have Mari-Lou Melo coming up in a second. She's a human geographer. What to expect for the future? That's the biggie. Still some answers trickling in. We have about 40 people on Menti.
So I think that's about all we're going to be getting, Antonia, and maybe you want to move on to the next item now?
Yeah, so now we're going to sit back and enjoy an underground space planning conversation between three professionals: Mari-Lou Melo from Australia, University of New South Wales. She's an urban geographer and a human geographer. And two colleagues of hers, Loretta van der Tan, she works for NGI in Norway at the moment and is a geotechnical expert. And then Shana de Brock, she works for the Flemish government in Belgium on questions of urban governance. They will ask themselves an important question. How do you approach the urban underground space planning conversation? From which angle? So have a look, and we will take your questions afterwards.
Thank you very much, Hannah and Antonia, for introducing us. So my name is Mari-Lou Melo, and it is great to be here. While we were thinking how to talk about underground space development, we had very interesting discussions about what we wanted to share with you today, what is relevant, and how we would like to communicate it. Immediately, it became evident that our different disciplinary backgrounds kicked in, and we started conversing from a particular point of view, from our own disciplines. We became aware of the challenges we face in communicating certain aspects of our work to some audiences, and we also discussed how to create paths for effective dialogue and communication. We would like to start this conversation about different disciplinary backgrounds and our interests by letting Loretta introduce herself and her work, and let us know what is her perspective about this disciplinary input into the underground development.
Thank you, Mari-Lou. So I'm also really happy to be here. Thanks, Hannah and Antonia, for inviting me. And as Mari-Lou said, we have had really engaging discussions when we prepared this session. And I continue to be surprised myself how deeply my own understanding and questions around underground planning are embedded in the engineering worldview, so in the worldview of the profession I've learned. So to kick off the discussion, I just want to say a few words about that worldview, or like about maybe the main questions within this space from the geotechnical engineering point of view. There are obviously many individual questions and problem areas, so I can't claim comprehensiveness, but and also I think a lot of the audience will be geotechnical engineers themselves, so I'll try to keep myself brief. So in many cities, those building sites with more stable and uncontaminated ground conditions, they've already been developed. And that means we will have to deal with more complicated soil conditions and increased remediation needs. A second point is that the proximity of many projects to the already built environment means that projects have to be implemented under very restricted conditions. And under these conditions, characterization of soils can be difficult, because it can be difficult to access the space for investigations on the one hand, and also thorough and efficient monitoring on construction sites will remain really important and an important focus of our work. So to be able to plan efficiently, we need to know what is currently there, and mapping and data exchange about existing underground assets has been a recurring topic in the communities discussing underground space, at least the ones I've been in contact with. So to go back maybe to the core topics of geotechnical engineering, in addition to the continued improvement of our understanding of how the urban development affects surrounding areas and buildings, we also start to integrate new concepts into our practice that contribute to kind of more broader policy focus areas like geothermal structures. One last point, maybe apart from the local effects, the ground also affects what and how we can build at larger scales, often across administrative boundaries. And geotechnical engineers play a role, in my understanding, in assessing those, like, for example, groundwater flooding or larger scale stability effects. And because of climate change, I think reassessing these effects might be necessary, and it's important that the knowledge about these effects gets integrated into spatial planning. So from my point of view, geotechnical engineers very often find themselves in a position where they enable something without being involved in the conversation of what should have been built. And the results are sometimes structures that are not optimized to the geological situation present. And because of that, can become really cost and material intensive, or if you want so, not sustainable. So currently I'm involved in a project called Under Oslo, where we try to address this by looking at both. On the one hand, we try to look at Oslo-specific geotechnical challenges, like the mitigation of excavation-induced settlements. But on the other hand, we also want to better understand the current governance of projects and where geotechnical engineers really could have a positive impact. So with this, I want to hand over to Shana, who knows a lot more about planning processes and governance than I do.
Thank you, Loretta. So I'm an urban planner and policy officer with the Flemish government. So I mainly work on developing policy on urban underground space and trying to find links between other fields or teams in urban planning policy. So I would like to take a minute and continue on the governance of underground projects. So from an urban planning point of view, the planning of urban developments and the governance of those developments, be it above or below ground, is actually a very complex issue, characterized by procedures and process and the involvement of different kinds of stakeholders at different times of the process. It's the interplay between the stakeholders and the process that I find most interesting. So I will get back to that. But first of all, in Flanders, when talking about governance of urban developments, we distinguish between procedures and process. So procedures are actually the legally binding measures that have to be taken account of when trying to get from an idea to a permit for construction. Large-scale underground projects, they follow the same procedures as large-scale above-ground projects. But however, these procedures are heavy and very time-consuming. And processes are related to the search for support and the involvement of partners such as citizens, politicians, experts. So with large-scale projects in comparison to small-scale projects, you have an increased degree of complexity regarding the process. Because the bigger the project, the more parties have to agree and come to terms. This also applies to both underground and above-ground projects. But here's the thing, with underground large-scale projects, the complexity in terms of process is even bigger. Underground developments, they frequently cross, as we know, property boundaries, which means that more people are involved. And if it is even necessary to expropriate property, it gets a whole lot more complicated. Also, in many countries, such as in Belgium, the legislation on ownership and subsurface property isn't clear, it's rather indistinct. And also, secondly, you could say then when you are developing on the surface, you can clearly see all the environmental aspects or aspects regarding the surroundings that need to be taken into account. In the subsurface, however, one can only rely on available data regarding the subsurface, regarding its geological characteristics and so on. But one important aspect is that the subsurface already holds several constructions and developments that we actually have forgotten of. It's not that uncommon that an underground building, such as a basement or a bomb shelter, is found when trying to develop, be it above or below ground. In Flanders, this is something that increases the complexity by a lot, the not knowing what is below our feet. This is a clear example where geoengineers and reliable data are a necessary part of the process. So what also increases the complexity within the process of governance is the lack of ways to foresee possible consequences of underground developments. A risk analysis of the subsurface developments should be well grounded in scientific facts or studies that take the possible effects of that underground development onto the inherent qualities of the subsurface and soil into account. Also on the effects of the surrounding buildings, the surrounding environment. But we see that in Flanders, there's still a lack of data to substantiate or really describe these possible effects. And then at last, the most important element that increases the complexity of underground projects are the technical aspects of the development. A lot more experts and expertise are necessary during the process of a subsurface large-scale development than during the process of a surface development. So additional technical expertise is necessary. That means that additional people with that expertise need to be involved in the process. So for a fact, Loretta, I know that we urban planners, we need the expertise of geoengineers, but actually I have no grasp on what your expertise holds. So I don't have a full understanding of what it could mean in the urban process, nor can I fully comprehend the magnitude it would have when bringing your expertise in at the right time in the urban planning process and how it could affect the uncertainty and complexity regarding urban underground space planning. So in Flanders, we're trying to find ways to deal with this complexity by developing new tools, such as a viability tool for estimating the feasibility of urban underground space projects. We are trying to establish a network of several stakeholders and setting up experiments with regards to governance. But I could go on, but I think it would be more interesting to hear from the point of view of Marilou as a human geographer.
So there are a couple of points that are prominent within the discussions or the presentations from Loretta and from Shanna, right? First is that the complexity of underground projects increases in terms of processes. If you want, compared to the surface, but also if we compare underground projects here and here, they also increase in complexity one compared to the other, right? And that these processes are influenced by who is involved at different times. It feels somehow that different types of expertise could be integrated at key times. For example, in the project inception, in the planning, in the development and the implementation. This expertise presence can vary in terms of the scale of the project. However, when it comes to underground space development, it might be valuable to have a constant presence of interdisciplinary skills to ensure that the best and most efficient uses of the space are integrated. So as Shanna mentioned, I am a human geographer. So it's a discipline that is not listed at the moment in the chat. And as a human geographer, I'm interested in how multiple and different actors relate to the underground, either by building infrastructure, either by extracting materials, or just for the enjoyment of being underground. I have collaborated quite extensively with cave divers. My thinking about underground spaces is motivated by these conversations that I have with multiple people, by their multiple imaginations, by how they think about the underground in the future, but also what would they want to do with it at the moment. So I discuss matters of ownership and access as well. This is a very important topic in my conversations, particularly in urban underground spaces. Who owns that space underground, but also who has access? Who has been invited to be part of this space? So these topics are obviously very complex, as Shanna mentioned before. And as you know, there is no one size fits all model of how underground looks and how it should look like. So one important aspect I often speak and think about is that ideals of the underground spaces and the projects that we want to develop there are always contextual. There are different aspects to the context. And for example, as engineers or as urban planners in the audience, you might be thinking, okay, what does she mean by context? Does she mean the geology? Does she mean the hydrology? What type of material context is she talking about? But I'm not necessarily talking only about the material context. I am also talking about potential powerful figures, political decisions, funding discussions. So all of these contexts matters when it comes to thinking about underground development and what is happening there. I also strongly believe that the societal considerations of underground development are underrepresented when we talk about underground spaces. In fact, from my research as a human geographer, it has become an urgent need to define what are the social impacts and benefits of underground development. Beyond quantifying saving time by users in terms of traffic or public transport uses, the understanding that by each project developed there are many potential services that are not being fully utilized for the societal benefits is reason enough to wonder what opportunities we have missed by not having a holistic view of the potential of underground developments. I believe these kind of open conversations can help the advocates of sustainable underground development, which I hope they are all of us here in the audience. What are the to these advocates to develop or to expand the possibilities of what is enacted underground? So in my view, it is important that all sorts of practitioners get involved in these wider conversations.
Thank you, Marie-Lou. I think it was extremely interesting to hear from this interdisciplinary angle from the three of you. And now we will head straight into Menti and do some audience interaction. Over to you, Marie-Lou.
Thanks, Hannah and Antonia, and thanks to the audience for being here with us today. So we have a couple of questions for you because we're interested to know what are your professional backgrounds, what are your disciplines. This will help us understand who are we having a conversation with, how can we actually bring this diversity of disciplines that we want to, to start a dialogue with. So thanks for those that are answering. We can see, urban engineer, geologist, urban planners, tunnel design engineer, tunneling engineer, physicist. Wow, I think wait, this is the first time we have a physicist in the audience. Second time, awesome.
Yeah,
hey,
probably the same fan.
Welcome, physicists, architects, geoengineering, graduate design engineer, management of facilities. All of these disciplines are really important when we think about underground spaces and the different projects that we can develop or that we can propose to develop in the underground space. I can see mining there as well, mining equipment engineer. Ooh, this is great, guys. It's good to see the diversity of disciplines, but we can see that the engineering presence is quite strong in the audience. And I think we might wait a little bit longer to see if there's more coming. Infrastructure owner. Thanks for that. Yeah, it's a very important role to plan, to consider what uses to develop in a certain space. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, we can see geotechnical engineer there at the center. And then we have, all these other disciplines that come in conversation with these disciplinary backgrounds. I think our next question will open up opportunities to discuss what professions you might think about are important to bring into the conversation. So we have a city and regional planning there as well. Hang, I don't know if we can go to the next question, and maybe we can start thinking, thank you. we gotta start thinking, if you were to partner with one single person from a different disciplinary background to yours, what profession or expertise could you seek? So something that you would like to work with: planners, urban manager, or architects. Planners. You see, Antonia?
Yeah.
I'm strong.
Nice one.
Yeah.
I'm wondering though, we have some marketing experts in the audience, but they're not outing themselves.
We'll find them. Designer. I find that very interesting. The data, did I lose it? Data manager, was it? Data scientist. Really interesting. Yeah.
That's a growing
if,
field.
Yes.
Psychologist as well. Nice one.
I like that. I like the social sciences coming through.
Dancer, very nice.
Dancer. Wow, yes. Dancer, planner, designers. Yep. Yeah, there were some designers in the audience as well. So good opportunity to start thinking about collaborations between our audience attendees. That would be good. Environmental specialist. A really important one, right? That connects very much with the topic that Chrysothemis is going to be developing in her presentation about sustainability. Oh, anthropologist. I like that one. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit biased.
What about geographers? Not very much in demand this time, huh?
I always try to push it, but I don't think it. I think we need to do a better job, geographers, trying to explain what we do.
Yeah.
So we get to be
reach out to their community more. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. But we have a good diversity here. There's a philosopher there mentioned. There's a lot of philosophers that have thought about underground spaces and their value for thinking. So yes, definitely, it's a good one. Sociology, psychologists. Thank you, everybody. But if you can see at the center, between the disciplinary backgrounds that we have in the audience and the disciplines that we would like to work with, we have the same expertise at the center of the word cloud, right?
Correct.
Correct. Yeah. This is an interesting perspective, right? Because the value that your technical engineers bring into the underground is invaluable, right? Like is the discipline that is at the core of what's happening with underground spaces, and the conversation there is essential to see what is happening here. So I think, yeah, that shows a lot of relevance. Architects,
you have another question in this section now, Marilu?
Yes, we have a final question.
Yeah, let's move on with that.
Yeah, sure. And the final question is, what influenced your choice of disciplinary partner? So for that second question, when you chose what disciplines you would like to work with, what were the reasons for doing that? Is it because they complement your work? Is it because they fill a knowledge gap? Or is it because they align with your project goals? And you can move the bar to answer this question.
Right.
Thank you. I can see some answers coming through. I can see people answering, Han, but I cannot see the bar moving.
Yes, that just occurred to me as well, but I have no idea. For some reason, it's not registering what people are answering, which is a pity.
Oh no!
It's too fancy, huh? This sliding.
Well, yeah. There could be a lag in the system, but this is not good. So unfortunately, I will need to delve behind into the engine compartment to see what's going on. I think we better move on now.
Have you oiled the engine, huh? Is the question.
Exactly, something along those lines. Yes.
So I think it gives us a good idea, and we will move on
There
to
we
the
go.
next
There we go.
part. Ah, we can see
Just a
it
quick,
now.
just quickly,
Yeah.
Marilu, what is it you see?
Yeah, the field knowledge gaps, which is what we've been talking about. It's about Shanna's and Loretta's presentation. That point is essential. That's it. Thanks everybody for your participation. This is great.
Thanks a lot. And in this next little section, we want to draw your attention to a big festival coming up on June 18th in the Hagerbach Test Gallery in Switzerland, commemorating its 50 year of existence and moving into the next 5 decades. Watch the show.
Over the past 50 years, in the middle of a Swiss mountain, we have tested, rejected, and improved. Pioneering projects have driven progress. Now the time has come to enter the Hagerbach Next 50 in the form of a hybrid event streamed from inside the test gallery. A moderated live stage, future-driven partner exhibitions, and more. Join on the 18th of June, where the future starts.
Okay, the future starts at the Hagerbach Festival on June 18th. Please stay tuned because ITACUS will be present with Mission Earth First with a very exciting part. We will inform you soon. And generally, the program is very rich and varied. Go to the Hagerbach website and you will find all about it. And you can also become a participant, a visitor, or even a sponsor if you wish. And now we would like to introduce Chrysothemis Paraskivopoulou. She's our activity group leader on urban sustainability. She's also assistant professor at the University of Leeds in the geotechnical department. And she has done some very interesting research with her group on urban sustainability and sustainable development goals. Let's hear from Chrysothemis now.
Thank you, Hannah and Antonia, for giving me the opportunity to present our group. Today, as said, I'm the lead of the Urban Sustainability Group in ITACUS and a big underground space believer. And in my everyday life, I'm an assistant professor in rock and tunneling engineering at the University of Leeds. But before I give you a brief overview, I would like to get your attention to these two graphs. So you can see the projections of the growth of world population until 2100, so 80 years from now. And you can see that the projection said that the growth population will be double by then. And on your right-hand side, you can also see the distribution of this growth, and you can see that Africa will govern this growth. But nevertheless, the problem here is, or the challenge here is, I would say, how can we make our cities sustain this growth and prepare for the new generations to come? And sky is the limit in some cases, and I don't like this phrase, but in cases it is a real thing. So I will give you a real example that I'm very familiar with. I grew up in Athens, and there is a height regulation for story buildings, so we cannot grow our cities vertically upwards anymore. And another example here is Hong Kong, where you have from one side the ocean constraint, on the other side you have the mountain line, and you have a long stripe where you need to grow this city. So that's a big challenge. How do we do it? And how do we use in a smarter manner the space that we have? And this is an example from the UK that I'm currently located. There are two-story buildings that they are being used for car parks. So is this a smart way to use this place, especially in dense cities? I would say no. We need to find alternative solutions. So why don't we think of the underground space? And we're all familiar with current applications like transportation, energy, groundwater, storage facilities, parking, even farming and recreational facilities. So this is in agreement with our ITACUS vision that the next level up is down. So, and when we don't have space restrictions, you can see real life examples that we can use the space in a smarter manner. So this is an example from the Cliffs of Moher in Ireland, and you can see the museum, the Visitors Museum. It is underground, and you can see on your right-hand side how this museum looks like in any other museums that could be above ground. And for those who are interested in architecture, you might have seen this house trending the past week, and you can see how the house is in underground and is in great harmony with the landscape, the surrounding landscape. So there is the need of transformation, but before we transform our way of thinking, we need to also understand, rethink, reshape, and repurpose underground spaces, or either new or existing ones. So here I will borrow Hans and Antonia's holistic appraisal underground space development model, and I'm going to go through this with you. So we cannot consider this development if we don't consider the past and the future as well as the present. And we need to start with thinking from going from outwards to inward circles. First, the suitability of the subsurface. Here we have the technical component, the engineering component most likely, then the impact of the on the ecosystem, the interaction with other underground structures if they exist, and then we can have a successful underground space development model. So on your right-hand side, you can see an example again from Greece. This is from Kimolos Island, and these are caves that they're being used for parking of the boats of the fishermen there. But some of them have been abandoned, some of them have been repurposed and they're be used as summer houses. Some of them are also used for other applications like summer bars for the visitors. But you can see that subsequently we use underground space and we alter the purposes based on our needs. And we cannot think underground space if we don't think sustainability. And it has been, the concept of sustainability exists since the early years. So we started from ancient Greeks, and there have been attempts to give a more complete definition of the sustainability, with the most governing one, the one that we use currently, and it was introduced by the World Commission in 1987. So the development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And sustainability cannot exist without thinking of different models of economy. Unfortunately, it is not the scope of this presentation, but if you want to learn more, you can refer to our publication where you can see on your right-hand side. So sustainability is SDGs, and our activity group is actually trying to target or to examine which one of them underground space development can target. So these are two examples of underground farming. So some of you might think this is strange, some of you might think this is innovative and disruptive. And there are two examples, real examples. One is located in Switzerland, and the other one is the UK. And I'm sure Klaus Wachter will talk about more of this in his presentation tomorrow. So one of you might think, okay, zero hunger is the one goal that is definitely targeting by using for underground space for such application. But if we were thinking Hans and Antonia's model, and we were considering the different aspects and the past and the present and the future, then we will come up with more targets as it is. So 11, which is sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production 12, and climate action 13. So in the other example I have here is the semi-underground housing. You can see different underground housing, great architecture in my opinion, and also considering that the total energy demand from in comparison of underground and above ground housing, you can see the benefits of building underground housing when we have the ability. And this is a chart I borrowed from Bernardo's et al. Publication. So if we were thinking the SDGs, these are the ones that would target, such application would target. Besides all of them, the most important would be the 17, because we cannot do innovative structures without having a very good partnership scheme. So this is what we're doing with our group. We have examined so far 30 projects, underground structures that we group them into these following categories: transport and commuting, energy, storage, recreational housing, food and beverage. This is just preliminary results. There's a long way to go. And in order to be more subjective on how we can think that each application or project it is targeting specific goals, we use this link here where it guides you to the atlas of the SDGs. So it gives more explanation what SDG, which SDG is targeting or is describing better. Sorry. Yes, so these are the first results. So you can see that from the database, the 61% of our projects are targeting goal 3, goal 7, and goal 11. And goal 5 and 14 and 15 are 14 and 16, sorry, are not being targeted with the existing underground project that we're looking. So perhaps this might change if we find applications that they do target it. So if we look at the specifically each one of these categories, for instance, transport and commuting, we can see that goals again 3 and 11 are being targeted 100% of our database. So for energy, the 83% of the projects, they target 3, 7, and 11. For storage, we had 7 and 13 being the most ones that they were targeting. And for recreational, 3, 7, and 15, where we have life of land. Housing, 7, 12, and 17, which is the partnerships. And FMB, I use this for the industry segment, but perhaps might need the better terminologies for underground farming and underground wineries. These were the main database for that. And the targets that they explored more was 11, 13, and 17. So a few key takeaways of this presentation. Underground space is a major strategic asset of cities worldwide, and when preserved and encountered holistically in the urban ecosystem can contribute towards securing long-term sustainability and resilience of cities. Underground space can contribute in achieving the SDGs, and we stood considering more when we're designing spaces and develop spaces. And developing a framework for holistically encountering underground space in existing urban ecosystems demands bringing together a multidisciplinary group of people consisting of experts, as Marilu, Loretta, and Sanad suggested just previously. And this is what ITACUS is trying to do here. And if you want to get involved with ITACUS or the activity groups, you can scan this barcode. And if you want to get involved with the group of sustainability, please get in touch, and I'm happy to get your feedback or any suggestions. So with that said, Antonia and Han, thank you for giving me the floor.
Thank you so much, Chrysothemis. I think the audience was able to learn a lot about urban sustainability and how underground space can contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. We can ask questions to Chrysothemis at the end. We are now doing another Mentimeter survey with you, where you can rank 4 statements on underground space on a scale. So whether you're familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, whether underground space can contribute to targeting several of the Sustainable Development Goals, whether you disagree or agree. Now the slider works very well. We can see that the bar is moving continuously towards the agreement level. So not all of you were familiar with the SDGs. That's a normal answer, but they're important in achieving sustainability worldwide, and we have targets to meet. And we firmly believe, and we've now demonstrated, that underground space can contribute. And many of you agree to this. Very good. Han, if you want to move.
Yeah. It's also nice to see that we are contributing to the awareness about the Sustainable Development Goals, Antonia, because quite a few people say they're not familiar with them, and hopefully the fact that we've highlighted them is going to give them some more interest, and they might even look them up and see what they could mean in their own practice.
I know, Han, and we should be paid to be UN ambassadors.
Yeah, we'll pick that up with the Secretary General next time we meet him.
Indeed.
Okay, shall we go on to the next question, Antonia?
Let's go on. There was a good participation on this one. Underground space development should focus not only on the present, but also on the past and the future. Do you disagree or agree? This was presented by Chrysothemis. So we see if you paid attention to the presentation. And I took away new findings about the SDGs and how underground space planning can contribute. Nice, everyone sort of
maybe Chrysothemis wants to comment on these results, Antonia?
Yes, Chrysothemis, if you can make yourself audible.
Hello, you can hear me?
Hi, yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you, yes.
Yeah, the results are very promising, and I really enjoyed people being more engaged with these SDGs, and hopefully more awareness will come up from such events. And will also, like, the real goal is for people to start thinking of the SDGs whenever they design an underground space as well, or thinking of developing an existing one or a new one.
Yeah, and I think you're really doing a great work with your activity group on urban sustainability. So to the audience, stay tuned for further research and development in that arena. And if you have questions to Chrysothemis' group and presentation, there will be an opportunity in the end of the session.
Thank you, Antonia and Han.
Thanks a lot, Chrysothemis. So I'm over to Peter and Rosanne, who will talk to you about the ITACUS YPTDP program. They co-lead our Young Professional Think Deep program.
Thank you so much, Han. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session. We will be talking about Young Professional Think Deep program. My name is Peter Salak. I'm a co-lead of the group, and I'm working for Dr. Sauer and Partners. And Rosanne from Amberg, and also co-lead of our group, will join me in this beautiful presentation. Let's start from the beginning. We will talk about the introduction and background for this program. We will then talk about the organization, what needs to be done to make sure that the program is successful. We will talk about the key advantages for the city and for the participant. And then we will conclude with the outcomes of our program. At the beginning, I really need to say that for us in ITACUS, it's really important to make sure that we have a urban underground future. What we mean by this is that the cities are growing and the population is growing. You saw it in the presentations before. And what we need to do is to really make sure that our approach, is holistic and it makes sense. We need to talk to different disciplines. The civil engineers need to talk to urban planners, to architects, to people in the city halls, and so on. Different disciplines need to talk to each other. Otherwise, the solution will not be basically as we want it, where we want our kids to live in the future. The interdisciplinary work between the professionals is only way forward, in our opinion. So cities are getting really more and more busy, and this is a picture which is showing, how busy the cities are above ground and below ground. And you see all these deep foundations and basements, and you see tunnels for utilities and water and metro lines and so on. And right now it's first comes, first serve, and people are not really, as we said, not talking to each other. And this is something what we need to and we must change.
Yes, and to solve this underground planning issue, ITACUS is cooperating with a lot of partners. And as Han already said, one of our key partners is ISOCARP, the International Society of City and Regional Planners. And as a result of our collaboration, we developed a book, and that book is about planning, development, and the use of underground space in cities. This book has been published in 2015, and it's an excellent source of ideas and examples of how to plan our cities, and at the same time considering the underground. After this book has been made, the YPTDP program came alive, the Young Professional Think Deep program. This program is not only a collaboration between ISOCARP and ITACUS, but also the International Tunneling Association Young Members Group is involved. The Young Professional Think Deep program is based on ISOCARP's Young Planning Professionals program. And this program has strongly proven to have a great methodology since 1991 already. So actually, the Young Professional Think Deep program is an extension of this ISOCARP's YPP program, and it includes cross-disciplinary work. So instead of only having planners working on the program, also underground specialists such as tunnel engineers or geologists are included in the program. And they will work together on combining above and underground urban planning.
So what are the key advantages for cities? Well, they will get the really fresh ideas for the specific planning challenge which they will have. This program will allow for a safe discussion of non-traditional approaches to the old problems which the city might have. It will increase interest in city development. Also, the ideas, as we mentioned, they will be from multidisciplinary team, so they will be really strong and solid. They will obtain comprehensive report, and it will be catalyst, and I cannot stress this more, it will be catalyst for change and better future of our cities. And last but not least, there will be also large exposure at ISOCARP and ITA World Congress of the results of these programs. What are the key advantages for young members, the participants? They will be mixing between different disciplines, so they will have a lot of experience and different approaches from different companies, different countries. They will be learning from each other, and they will work with the high-level professionals, with the tutors, with maybe more than 20 years of experience, industry experts. They will also challenge they will face the new professional challenges, and they will learn new skills and abilities. For example, presenting in front of the mayor of the cities like Glasgow or Wrocław. What are our responsibilities? We will make sure that the workshop will get the right methodology for the specific planning issue which we will be tackling. We will provide list of possible attendees, and we will select international experts. We will provide workshop coordinators, and we will help to conduct the workshop that it goes smoothly and everything is going according to the plan. And most important, we will make sure that the results in terms of presentations and reports will be of the highest quality. And what are the responsibilities of local partner of the city, which will be basically, getting the program from us? The city needs to find specific planning challenge which we can work on. They will help us to select workshop participants and tutors, and the city needs to cover flights and food and accommodation of the people who will attend the workshop, the program. They will also need to provide some working space and equipment such as printers and so on. And last but not least, they will need to provide local coordinators, which will help us to make sure that the program is going well.
Yeah, so now let's move on to the organization of such program. How is it set up? So the program consists of 5 days of hard work by a group of 15 to 20 young members. And by young members, we mean people with the age below 35. And those participants are a mix of planners and underground space professionals who are then being tutored and coordinated by industry leaders, industry experts, so to say, who have over 20 years of experience. And then the local coordinator will support the attendees with the local knowledge. And what is really important about this is that those numbers are really flexible. So, for example, if a city would like to include more disciplines, that's possible, but maybe also students or even other ideas, everything is welcome, and the program can really be adapted to a city's needs. Then moving over to the budget, the cost estimation, and the cost mainly depends on the amount of participants and where those participants are from. If the participants have to come from further away, the flights will be more expensive, and that's how, for example, cost can be reduced if you have more local participants. Sponsors from commercial sectors are welcomed. However, some level of funding should come from the organizing municipality or city. And here I would like to highlight that this program has such great value for money, because imagine all the participants, the tutors, the coordinators, with all their experience, they donate their free time and work really hard for 5 days. So they work for free, and the city only has to pay the direct cost, as mentioned before, such as the accommodation, food, and flights. So that's a super deal for a city coming along when organizing such program. Then how does a week like that look like? And the week will start with introductions and a site visit. And the group will then together define the problem statement. And after that, brainstorm sessions and execution of ideas will be performed in groups. And then the week ends, as Petra already mentioned, with presenting the work to the city, for example, also to the mayor, as happened in one of our YPTDPs. And all those ideas will then be gathered in a final written report. Here you see an overview, a brief output overview of our previous YPTDP programs. And you see here different sketches, but also diagrams. And I would like to point out here that the great thing is of this program that not only ideas for a certain challenge a city is coping with arise, but really methodologies are founded. And those methodologies, those are very, very valuable because they can possibly also be used for other issues or challenges a city is coping with. And also those ideas and methodologies can be applied elsewhere, but maybe also in other cities or even other countries. And the participants also bring those ideas home. So here you see the two reports as a result of our two YPTDP programs. The left one is from the one in Glasgow and the right one is the one in Wrocław. if you are interested in the output of those programs, you can find those online on our webpage. And also, if you have an interest in urban underground planning, it's a must read, I would say. And then to conclude, if you've liked what we have been talking about the last 10 minutes and you're curious to learn more about the Young Professional Think Deep program, scan this QR code. It will lead you to the full promotion video of the Young Professional Think Deep program. And with that, I would like to thank you all for your attention. I would like to thank Han and Antonia for giving Peter and me the floor. And if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Thanks so much, Rosanne. Thanks so much, Peter. Rosanne Berlob from Amberg Engineering, Switzerland, and Peter Salak from Dr. Sauer and Partner, currently working in Israel, are co-leading our activity group on the Young Professional Think Deep program. And now we have a block where you can ask questions in Menti on everything you've seen and heard so far. Let's see if you have any questions to our presenters and also the two moderators.
And just while we wait for the questions to come in, Antonia, I already answered one earlier that was asked in the question section inside the go to webinar menu, which was actually on the on how far does the ownership of the surface stretch so in Europe, and I answered that it kind of varies per member state, but usually the age-old concept of ownership till the center of the earth still applies, and very much is an issue when we're talking about the use of underground space. So here the first questions are popping up. When is the next webinar? We'll answer that at the end, I think. How do you see the impact on future underground space planning from risks like pandemics? So who do you think of our experts is best suited to answer that question, Antonia?
I would say Marie-Lou or Chrysothemis. One of the two of you should answer that one.
Marie-Lou, would you like to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I'm happy to start, and then Chrysothemis, you can complement. So I think infrastructure is playing a role that is essential when it comes to pandemics, and not only pandemics, but any other sort of disaster that we are experiencing, particularly in the urban space because of high densities, but obviously everywhere, right? So I think it's important to think about infrastructures that help with mobility, but also increase safety of people. We saw, for example, that food availability and food distribution is an essential aspect during disasters. And I think underground spaces, not only for storage, but maybe Hannah and Antonia can talk about one of the Hagerback projects where they are developing underground agricultural systems. And I think thinking creatively and sustainable about the underground is a good idea.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. What is the rough cost of organizing a YPTDP? Rosanne or Peter, please. Rosanne is on audio. Sorry, Rosanne.
Yes, hi there. Yeah, so as mentioned in the presentation, it's very dependent on the amount of participants. But if you would go for, let's say, 30 participants, the price will be around 25,000 to 30,000 euros.
Okay, 35,000 euros. That's not a lot considering what the city gets, right? In terms of a week's effort of a whole group of young professionals.
Exactly, and I also would like, if I may add to that, that you not only get one idea, but the more participants, the more ideas you also get. So if you have, for example, 30 participants, you can have, let's say, 6 groups of 5 people, and that means you get 6 ideas very elaborated on. So that's a great add.
Perfect. Yeah, we're currently talking to a few cities to implement the next ones. So we're looking forward to moving on with that program and making further cities more happy and more wise. Okay, how can we improve the attractiveness of underground spaces? That's an interesting one. How about Chrysotemis? Do you have an answer to that one for the audience?
Yeah, thank you, Antonia. I think it's by making them more friendlier to public. A great example is Stockholm Metro, underground metro. If you have visited, I haven't been one of the lucky ones to visit it, to be honest, but it's on my to-do list. But it inspires you. So if you make, if you consider and put architects that will improve or give their science into developing the underground space, I think you can create structures that they don't have to be jealous of any above ground space, and also use a very smart way of lighting and bringing underground above ground lighting into the underground, like the low line system or the project in New York City that hasn't been implemented yet, but it's a great example.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some very nice initiatives and good ways to make the spaces more accessible and more user-friendly and well-designed. Yeah. Do we have time for one more question? Yes, we do. Which one do we take? Did you pick one out, Han, or should I?
Well, there's so much coming past. I think what we at least need to do is look at them after the webinar and see if we can answer some of those questions and put them on our website. I think that would be a good idea. I see here the American Envision protocol. I have no recollection of that being used, but that could be interesting. There are a lot of frameworks currently out there that can be used for sustainable projects, so we could have a look at those, whether or not they would apply to underground space. And there's another one here: what is the urgency of having underground space as the main alternative living space, and where is the most feasible area to implement one? I don't know whether we're actually looking at creating alternative living space, but I think the one thing that we're noticing, at least in some of the Asian countries, Singapore, Hong Kong, but also in Europe, is that we want to curb the spread of our cities. So the horizontal development needs to be curbed, and that's when we start to look at what we call verticality. And usually we then only look up to the sky and we start to look at high-rise buildings. And I think part of the ambition or part of the vision that cities should develop should also include looking at the subsurface and see what that can be used for. And the main reason, the main driver for planning underground spaces, I think, comes from the fact that it's already being used in various ways without any planning or any regulations. And this, of course, is not a good way to develop your city.
Yeah, and as you said, Han, and to use the subsurface in a complementary and symbiotic way to the surface of our cities, and not a parallel existence or so on. Yeah. So we will go through the questions because they're really good ones that we may have not answered now. And it's indeed time to wrap up. Time flies, unfortunately. Thanks so much.
I've changed my background, Antonia, just to kind of, yeah, just to promote the book we both wrote. You know, the Underground Spaces Unveiled, and just to point people to the website thinkdeep.net. A lot of the issues that have been covered here during this webinar, you can also find more information on that and backgrounds in the book Underground Spaces Unveiled, which really is a book that aims at both the general public, but specifically also covers all kinds of planning issues that need to be tackled. And I also saw a question on who's going to finance all this. and there's a whole chapter devoted in the book on the on financing these projects. So if you're really interested, go for it.
And in fact, I have the pleasure to hold a lecture on ETH for the entire semester, which we are basing on the book. And ETH students have the pleasure to read that, whether they like it or not. Yeah, so a brief summary from us, from ITACUS, from our team. We wanted to show you some bits of our activity group's works. We can only show you excerpts in a short time, but we hope you're hooked. We hope you follow us. We have also a new ITACUS LinkedIn page where we always let people know when we hold webinars and when we produce new research material. And I think we hope you got a good overview of the urban planning, the underground space angle conversation, and also the urban sustainability aspects. And think in your own city whether you might want to hold a Young Professional Think Deep program. And if you have questions, you can ask Rosanne and Peter about that.
Just one final comment from my side, Antonia. There was one question: when is the next webinar coming up? Well, I think the next activity that ITACUS is going to be involved in, and indeed Mission Earth First, will be, of course, on the 18th of June when we have the Hagebach Next 50 festival. So that's something to look forward to. Announcements about the program will be made somewhere in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. And ITACUS will be there as part of the main stage program, but also doing a workshop which is going to prove, I think, very interesting as well. So the 18th of June, mark that day in your calendars. Very important. If you have passion with underground space, or as Chrysosthemis put it, if you're an underground space believer, then you can't miss the 18th of June.
Yes,
back to you,
and
Antonia.
also, thank you, Han. It will be a, how do you call it, hybrid event. So the Hagebach Test Gallery actually hopes to have participants live there for the day. Currently, the Swiss government allows small events to happen with the necessary safety precautions. So we'll see what the situation is at that stage, but it will definitely also be virtual. With that, we want to close and thank you and see you soon.
We are Mission Earth First, because Earth counts.